Thank you very much for being here. The introduction of the mining reform legislation that Chairman Lowenthal of the Subcommittee on Energy and Minerals is holding a hearing on today is a very important day, and we wanted to mark it by inviting people to come and talk about the importance of the legislation. I was thinking about what to say about something from 1872. There's a lot of things you could say about history. For instance, the only thing on the grounds here was the Capitol. Nothing else was here in 1872. No parking lots because there were no cars. No cell phones, iPhones because there was no phones. And that law was, the mining law of 1872 was signed into law. And basically what it told people is, go out there, it's yours, it's free. And that's still the practice right now. And this is not about an extinction of an industry, as the opponents of the legislation will say. This is about the fundamental reform of an industry, catching up with time and catching up with the changing situations that have happened in the West. It's not the old West. It's not 1872. It's the new West, with different demands for the use of our natural resources and an increased ethic of conservation and protection for those resources. That's the new West. And this law does not accommodate that change, and this law needs to be changed. I think the most important thing to note on the reforms of this is that we provide a multi-use concept for our public lands with the same requirements of evaluation, study, impact, consultation with tribes, and make it a participatory process as opposed to the closed process that it is right now under the existing law. We charge royalties like any other extraction, 12.5 for new, 8% for existing, and exemptions for those mythical grub stakers that are out there on their own with their mule looking for precious metals. Anybody that makes less than $50,000 from mining activities is exempt. So we're trying to protect that grub staking myth that everybody has about mine. Mine are multinational companies. They're a huge industry and a very influential industry here in Congress. The mining law reform, I think, is just that, reform. It's a step toward bringing some clarity, some honesty, and some reality into the mining law of 1872. Those days are gone. We have present times ahead of us, and we need to talk about the environment, cultural resources, protection, and leaving some areas absolutely alone from mining activity. So that's the legislation generally, and I want to thank, I want to thank Senator Udall for his companion legislation in the Senate. Tom Udall is a dear friend. We served in the House Resources Committee together, and he helped me a great deal, and I owe him a debt of gratitude. But at the same time, his leadership in the Senate on these fundamental issues of reform and this fundamental law that exists is something. He has been a stalwart champion, and beyond that, a leader on the issue. And I want to thank him and invite him to make some comments. Senator.
Thank you, Raul. Thank you. Raul, thank you for calling, Chairman Grijalva, thank you for calling us all together today. Congressman Alan Lowenthal, great to be here with you. Great to be here with all the advocates and their wonderful signs displaying what's going on here. And with Percy Anderson from the Navajo Nation. Percy's, I believe, from New Mexico, from my home state, but the Navajo Nation is across 3 states in the West and the largest Native American reservation in the country. We're here today because the American people are being taken to the cleaners by our antiquated mining laws, and they're being left with a mess. Back in 1872, and it was good to hear Raul talk a little bit about the history here of what was going on in 1872. In 1872, in my home state of New Mexico, it was a good 40 years from joining the Union. All the way back then, dreaming of westward expansion, Congress handed out a free ride for hard rock mining. If you could locate minerals on public land, then the land and the minerals were yours, without royalties and with a paltry fee. It was an incentive system to encourage individual miners, like the 49ers, to move to the vast unknown of the American West. But the West has long since been settled, and those miners are now mining conglomerates, big corporations, many of them foreign-owned with billionaire investors, and they are looting our public lands. They are taking the gold, the silver, and the copper without paying a dime. And meanwhile, our mining laws are stuck in the Wild West. When my father left his post as Interior Secretary, he felt particularly strong, by the way, about Raul Grijalva. It was the only time I remember him endorsing somebody in a Democratic primary when Raul ran for Congress over in Arizona. But my father, when he left, he said mining reform was his greatest unfinished business. That was 50 years ago. 50 years ago. It's well past time for our mining laws to change. Coal miners have to pay royalties to the American public, so do oil and gas companies, yet the hard rock mining industry continues to get an outrageous sweetheart deal, unlike any other industry. As my Uncle Mo used to say, it's like a real estate fire sale without the fire. The hard rock mining industry must pay its fair share, not just to repay the American public for mining their minerals, but also to address the steep environmental toll they leave behind. We have hundreds of thousands of abandoned mines littering the West, leaving behind in their wake contaminated land, polluted streams, and depleted watersheds. By one estimate, over 50 million gallons of toxic wastewater flows from abandoned mines into our rivers and streams every day. Those abandoned mines are a terrible legacy of our terribly outdated mining laws. Mining companies reap the profits, and they stuck the American taxpayer with a cleanup bill worth tens of billions of dollars. The miners get the gold, the taxpayers get the shaft. We're here to put an end to all of that, to finally reform our antiquated mining laws. I've been working on this issue with Raul for a long time. I was working on it when I was in the House, which was a good 10 years ago. And we now have the momentum. The big Mo is on our side. We're going to get this done because public lands belong in public hands. If mining companies want to profit from the American people's land, then they need to pay their fair share and clean up their mess. With that, let me turn it over to Congressman Alan Lowenthal. Alan is the chair of the House Resources, Energy, and Mineral Resources Subcommittee. I know he's labored long on this piece of legislation, and he's done a very, very good law. And all of us, the House and Senate, people committed to this, are looking forward to working together and getting this done. Alan.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Senator Udall. Thank you, Chairman Grijalva, for your leadership on this critical issue. And thank everybody here for joining us today. You know, to say that our current mining laws are antiquated is an understatement. As you've already heard, today's mines are regulated by a law that was passed in 1872, 147 years ago. You know, I'm from California, and the Golden State, where the 49ers got their name. That's really where I'm from. And, you know, if we think about it, in 1872, it was only 7 years after the Civil War. The nation was badly divided. President Grant had decided that it was really important to push for westward development, for the nation to come together, to move to the West. And he did it by providing free land and free miners to help to settle the West. But I have a breaking news for everyone today. I'm so glad you're here. The West has been settled. That it is. It's breaking news. I understand. You're very excited about it. But that was the purpose of this. The 147 years to settle the West, and I'm here to tell you it has been accomplished. It has been accomplished. So now the Hard Rock and Reclamation Act of 2019, which I'm proud to be an original co-sponsor, which I'm chairing in a hearing just right after this press conference later this morning, provides the much needed updates to bring mining law out of the last century into the 21st century, out of 2 centuries back, really, we're talking about 1872. The face of mining has also radically changed since the 19th century. Remember when, in that time, hard rock mining was done by an independent prospector with a pick and a shovel. But what is mining today? Who is receiving the benefits? Mining today is a multi-billion-dollar industry run by mostly foreign corporations, and which are international conglomerates. And this creates, because there are no regulations, this has created massive scars on the American landscape. The hard rock mining industry is the #1 polluter in the United States. Roughly 50 million gallons of toxic wastewater, the equivalent of over 2,000 tanker trucks. It flows from the hundreds of thousands of hard rock mining sites every single day. Unlike with coal, the hard rock mining industry does not have to pay for these costs at all, so it's different. They also pay no royalties for the resources that they get, and as was pointed out, over $300 billion of gold, silver, copper, and other minerals have been taken from public lands recently without one dime coming back to the American taxpayer. If we're going to allow foreign companies and conglomerates to extract resources freely from our public lands, then we must change that idea and that concept and say that the American taxpayer must be fairly compensated. Our public lands belong to all Americans, and we're more and more aware of that every single day, that the need to protect our public lands. And so corporate interests should not be allowed to take advantage of our mistakes by allowing antiquated laws to stay on the books. It's not their fault, it's our fault, and it's about time we changed it, and that's why we're here today, to change the rules. Mining reform, these new rules must treat mining the same as any other public lands use, rather than exalting it to a special category in itself. And mining reform must protect our special places, make it clear that our federal land managers can reject, if they need to, a mining proposal that's going to cause unacceptable dangers and unacceptable consequences to the environment. The Hard Rock Mining and Hard Rock Leasing and Reclamation Act of 2019 does all of this. It's a major first step in the reform of our inadequate and failed mining laws. And now I'm pleased to introduce Katie Kale, the Community Director of the Yellowstone Gateway Business Coalition. Katie. Oh, Carrie. Carrie Kale, that was me, Carrie.
Thank you, Congressman.
That was the line of the
Thank you. My name is Carrie Kale, and I am the Community Director of the Yellowstone Gateway Business Coalition. About 3.5 years ago, while working at Chico Hot Springs, a resort and hotel just north of Yellowstone, we found out about 2 foreign gold mining companies planning to mine for gold in Paradise Valley. One of those mines would have been directly behind our resort, one of the largest employers in our community. Those of us at Chico knew immediately the disaster this would have been for our business and the hundreds of other businesses in and around Paradise Valley that depend on clean water and our outdoor economy, not to mention the thousands of hardworking employees and their families. People flock to Yellowstone and its gateway communities because of our abundant wildlife, pristine watersheds, unspoiled scenic beauty, and our precious quality of life. These visitors help fuel a diverse economy. We host the only year-round entrance to Yellowstone National Park, and our county ranks #1 in Montana in tourist dollars spent among major destination counties. The fishing industry alone in our county brings in $70 million a year. A gold mine at the headwaters of the Yellowstone River would have destroyed that. The entire community recognized the destruction these mines would bring to our area's livelihood and way of life. Business leaders knew they needed to fight for their businesses and their community. With that will and passion, the Yellowstone Gateway Business Coalition was formed. The coalition was created first and foremost to protect our economy and our way of life. We are Republicans, Democrats, and independents. We are pro-business, pro-private property rights, and we are not anti-mining. We believe that communities should have input into whether and how their local public lands are developed. This is why I'm so excited for this effort by Chairman Grijalva and Senator Udall to reform a mining law that was written the same year that Yellowstone became the first national park in the world. This law favors international mining interests over local businesses. It's about time that this law was fixed in order to even the playing field for our communities. Thanks to our congressional delegation, our community was lucky enough to earn permanent protection for our public lands through the Yellowstone Gateway Protection Act. But we want to make sure that no other community has to stop everything and spend precious time away from their businesses and families fighting for an act of Congress. I am confident that reputable mining companies would agree the 1872 mining law is out of date, and local communities and businesses should not play second fiddle to foreign mining interests. Let's move forward with mining laws that make sense in the 21st century. There are places that should not be mined, and people and communities deserve the right to speak up and defend those places. Like in Montana, we say Yellowstone is more valuable than gold. Thank you. Now I'd like to introduce Kimberly Strong from the Chilkat Indian Village of Klukwan. Kimberly?
Good job.
Thank you. My name is Kimberly Strong. I'm from the Chilkat Indian Village of Klukwan. I want to introduce my community a little bit. The name Klukwan means eternal village, the village that has always been. The name Chilkat means, Chilkat and Tlingit means a holding place for salmon. The Chilkat River is home to the 5 Pacific salmon, and it is now being endangered by a Canadian mining company called the Constantine Mining Resources. They are also being backed by another foreign country of Japan, the Dowa Corporation. They both want to mine upstream from the Chilkat River. I want to thank Representative Grijalva and Senator Udall for introducing the bill of the reform bill for 1872 Mining Act. My people believe that we are responsible for stewarding the lands that sustained us for thousands of years, and we thank you for being part of this to help us survive for another 1,000. The current 1872 law makes it impossible for anyone to be steward of our land, as it gives all the power to the mining companies by saying that mining supersedes all other uses of the land. This means the foreign companies' profit is more important than the livelihoods of the people that live in the communities. The river feeds us, the Chilkat River feeds us financially, culturally, spiritually, and literally. And the toxic discharge of a mine directly upstream will wipe us off the map. It is not a question of if the mine will release a pollution, or if its tailings dam will fail. It is when will that happen. We must stop the mine, and we must change our mining laws to keep countless communities from having to fight foreign corporations for their own survival. I don't want to go down in history as the last tribal leader of the Chilkat Indian village of Klukwan. I don't want my name to go down in history as being the last leader of the 21st century. I want to thank you all for being here, and a deep appreciation from the Tlingit people of the Chilkat Indian village. I would like to introduce Percy Anderson, Navajo Nation community advocate and organizer.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Percy Anderson. I am from the communities of Manuelito and Gallup, New Mexico, and I have been working within the communities of McKinley County as well as into Cibola counties. And our areas have been greatly affected by past uranium mining. Even to this day, many of our waters are contaminated, and so I'm going to speak about that this morning. So I'm here today to represent the communities and people who feel they have no voice through their elected representation. I'm here to express our concerns for our environment and for the safety and cleanliness of our groundwater. Water that sustains us through healthy soils, plant life, animals, and insects. We support the efforts being made for the Hardrock Mining Reform Act of 2019. Reform is needed for outdated laws that go back to 1872. Attention is now critical for healthy communities and clean drinking water. For too long, we have suffered under the weight of extracting for minerals and fossil fuels and the devastation that extraction has done to our health and well-being for individuals, families, and communities, and the environment. Too many have passed on without seeing their children and grandchildren prosper. This Reform Act will allow us as tribal nations to have more control over our lands. Our communities will be better able to regulate, monitor, and consult on the extraction of resources from Mother Earth. The reform will assist our communities with necessary funds to further clean up abandoned mines such as past uranium mining that has littered our Navajo Nation from every direction of the Colorado Plateau. The act will set new standards for federal agencies that issue permits and regulate the operations and reclamation activities of corporate and industrial energy companies. Most importantly, this act will be another seed to further promote healthy communities by providing us the necessary ingredient for life-sustaining nourishment through water and healthy soils. We need this for the prosperity of future generations. Thank you, and God bless all creation.
So if anybody has any particular questions for any of the people that spoke today, we're available, and thank you very much for attending. We're available individually, so please. Thank you. I'll see you there.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sorry.